I want to discuss a book by Jonathan Rose called The Intellectual Life of the British Working Classes, which I don't see discussed that often, but was quite important for me in opening up a side of working class history that I was unaware of. And it's that of auto-didacticism, self-teaching, that characterised working class life, at least in significant minorities, until maybe about 1950. And Rose explores very convincingly how a significant minority of working class people were incredibly well read. They came across books second hand. They read heavyweight stuff, the classics, Plato, the great poets, history. They became very well educated in this way. And in some areas, this was more thoroughgoing, such as in Welsh mining towns, which often had community libraries. There was probably quite a pervasive culture of autodidacticism, of reading. In other areas, it would still be something unusual, something that would probably make any working class autodidact feel different and distinct from those around him, but still notable enough to say that a significant minority of working class people were very well educated, very well self-educated. And as well as obviously completely falsifying any idea that working class people are unable to learn these things, it also raises a question of where this culture went. I don't think Rose says this very clearly, but to me, the rise of TV must have a big part to do with it for the effective disappearance of such a culture. What Rose suggests is that the modernist movement of the Bloomsbury Group, involving Virginia Woolf and others, was that this was an almost deliberate attempt to create a new elite culture, that as the middle classes realised that the working classes were catching up with them, so to speak, gaining the same cultural capital, they almost deliberately set out to create a new, difficult kind of literature that could only be decoded by those in the know. The people like T.S. Eliot were, snobs who didn't want the masses being on the same level as them. And while I think there might be some truth to it, so we see with Virginia Woolf, for example, that although she taught evening classes to working class women, she could be quite snobby about them, even as she was sympathetic to the plight of the lower orders, so to speak. Could there be a sort of subconscious motivation in that way? Maybe. I can't really find much evidence that it was deliberate. I read the book by John Carey that Jonathan Rose refers to, which explores this idea, and I couldn't see, at least from skimming it, that there was much concrete evidence that D.H. Lawrence or whoever deliberately wanted to create an elite literary culture out of the reaches of the common man. But in some ways, it had that effect, and yes, T.S. Eliot and others were relatively snobby about the great masses, including the new emerging lower middle classes, the clerkly caste, and their sort of peppy worldview and manners. That was often sneered at in a number of ways. So do check out this book if you come across it, because it does open up an avenue that hasn't been explored enough.